Hello, fellow YouTubers, and welcome. So, as the title will describe, because I haven't titled this video yet, I'm obviously making it, of course. I'm going to show you how to eliminate brake squeal forever. So, it's actually very, very simple. Um, I have a 2008 Honda Accord, and I upgraded the rotors to slotted rotors, and I put in ceramic Brembo pads. And ever since I did, I've had immense brake squeal. I mean, like embarrassing brake squeal, like Ford Taxi in the 80s brake squeal. And I didn't know why. And when I first replaced the pads, I found out it was because the great mechanic who had done the brake job for me had put the inner pads, both inner pads set on the left wheel, and he put both outer pads on the right wheel. So obviously that's no bueno. So that was one problem. The second problem when I did the last brake job was there was a lot of debris in the caliper pins. As you can see, it's accumulated again. Um, and most importantly, there was no lubrication on the pins. So what I'm going to do today, which is what you guys should do if you never want your brakes to squeal, of course assuming that you have new hardware, because obviously if you have old brakes, old rotors, and they're worn, that will cause squeaking and squealing and vibration. So that's something else. This is if you have new hardware, and you have brake squealing or vibration. This could be a possible reason why. So, let's see. Oh, and I wanted to show you this thing that I did here. It's very unique. I'm sure no one has ever done this in the history of mankind. Instead of using chicken wire to hold the caliper, I used zip ties. So it's very good. And I used 4 here, but I won't need to use 4 again, because I could just take this guy and cut it and then just replace that guy with one other zip tie. So I think it's pretty sweet. It's extremely important that you support that caliper. You don't want the brake hose to have any pressure or stress on it, because that will do a lot of damage. This car is 10 years old now. The last thing I want is damage to this rubber hose. Okay, so lastly, well, not lastly, but so I'm gonna make sure I change these. First, I'm gonna just take out these clips. I have a new set of Brembo pads here with clips. It comes with a little bit of lubricant, but it's definitely not enough. The lubricant I'll be using, which was pretty good last time, and I'll be using it again, was Permatex, the ceramic extreme brake part lubricant. It's pretty expensive. It's about $11, but it's the best one. I bought the most expensive one because I wanted the best. And this is definitely the most important part of the job, is applying this. And this is where it gets tricky, because this is one of the most amazing products I've ever come across, but the directions aren't clear. And so I'm going to provide you with very clear directions right now. So number one is, so you can see with these old pads, I did it already. It's so dirty though, so you can't see much, but I'm going to try to do this with one hand. Let's see how well this goes. So, I mean, it depends on your pads, of course. These Brembo ceramic pads, I'm able to separate the backplate from the actual pad. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, because what happens with these ceramic pads is that the backplate vibrates on the pad, and that is, I would assume, the major cause of squealing. So now that you've got your backplate off, this stuff is pretty thick, so you don't need to apply much. So you want to do that. That should be good enough. And you want to take that back plate. You ideally want to do this when you get new pads, because when I did this with I had put in these pads that I partially used, and then I put them back on the car, but the back plate had already um, it had already how do I say this? It had already molded to the caliper, and it had warped a bit, so it didn't get a great seal. As you can see here, as I'm pressing it down, it's creating a perfect seal. What this is really is a glue, and it hardens, and it comes out like a rubber texture. And the great thing about it is it's going to eliminate all that brake squeal for you. So you see, I put too much. um, as my grandma used to say, it's better that it's more than less, but in this case, um, you might want to put a little less, because it is very thick. So that's one step. There's two steps. So that's one step. Make sure you don't get this stuff on the actual pad, because that is no good. You don't want to get anything on the pad. This applies even to brake pads on bicycles. I had a mountain bike, and one time I had an incident, and I had to change a whole bunch of parts, and I was lubing stuff up, and I got oil on the Shimano pads, and I ruined the pads, and I ruined the rotor. And I'm not certain if that will be the same effect on a car, but I do know that it's no good for the rotor, because it piles up on the rotor, and then it just gets slippery, and it doesn't grip well. Okay, so that's one step. Putting this glue stuff, this disc brake quiet, between the back plate and the actual pad. And then the second step is, and for this part you want to look at your caliper. Most calipers are the same. So basically you want to put glue where the caliper is going to make contact with that back plate. So I actually have some that poke through that hole, so I'm just going to smear that. Okay, and I'm going to smear that. And then basically what you're going to do is you're going to mount that into the caliper, and then that extra glue that you put is going to mate with the caliper, and then that'll keep the pad nice and flush within the caliper, and that will avoid the pad from shimmying or moving. And ideally, that's it for your brake squeal. Alright, thanks YouTube, and let me know if you liked the video. I'll make some more. Take care, bye bye. God bless.